could make history by becoming the first African-American president of the United States. It's an honor to welcome Senator Barack Obama.
Give me your assessment of Barack Obama, where he's come from, what he's done, what he's accomplished. He's a political phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely. He's an inspiring candidate. And he's got the young people out there just eating out of the palm of his hand.
It is very interesting the way he's treated. He goes on a talk show like Ellen DeGeneres and they start to dance. He's not treated like most politicians.
He's gotten the reception of a rock star wherever he's traveled.
I can tell you that the members of the media are in love with Senator Obama.
I have to tell you, it's part of reporting this case. The feeling most people get when they hear a Barack Obama speech, I felt this thrill going up my leg. I mean, I don't have that too often.
Steady.
The press loves Obama. Red in the face, embarrassed to stand up, go to bed thinking about you. I love you, sealed with a kiss kind of love.
I think from a reporter's point of view, it's almost hard to remain objective because it's infectious.
It's a young bunch of people, and they're very excited about him. It's a little hard to really dig in with investigative reporting when you feel that way.
And he's passing his hope bong around the drum circle of young America.
His
hope bong, Larry. He's inviting people to take deep tokes off of his bong packed with hope.
He is the one. Barack Obama!
The strongest experience that I have is in foreign relations is the fact that I spent 4 years living overseas when I was a child.
We need Barack Obama.
They were so moved by the crowds that he drew. They focused not on what he said, but how well he said it.
Having been on the Washington Post, I know that there's this herd mentality.
Yes, we can!
I think it's partly laziness.
He's sort of a gift from the world to us.
We are the ones we've been waiting for.
I mean, reporters are like fish. You know what I mean? Something, bright and shiny wiggles past you and you just instinctively go for it.
Barack Obama!
He speaks about America in a way that has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with the feeling we have about our country, and that is an objective assessment.
Barack Obama! Yes, we can! Yes, we can!
I started doing stories on Reverend Wright in early January. The media did a disservice to Democrats by not letting them know this information before the primaries.
Anyway, guys, come on now. I mean, I just answered like 8 questions. Why is it that like I can't just eat my waffle?
Well, sometimes you get to eat your waffle, but sometimes reporters bark questions to you.
In a lot of ways, Barack Obama is the canvas that the media and people have kind of painted in the way they want to see it.
We hear an awful lot about him, and particularly how his great personal magnetic appeal and what a great speaker he is, but what's he going to do for the world?
He really hasn't led to the kind of fair scrutiny and real discussion of background that I think is important for a presidential candidate.
There seems to be this demand for special treatment.
What bothers me is the idea that it's somehow wrong to press him, right? It's your job if you're in the press.
He is a vanity that serves your narcissism in some sense. The proof of that is the fact that you refuse to be critical.
When the atmosphere now is Barack Obama, it's important to elect Barack Obama.
As many of you know, over the last few months, I've been thinking hard about my plans for 2008.
Thank you, Chicago. Let's go get to work. I love you.
But he's not even left or right. He's a radical.
Change, unity, hope. Senator Barack Obama has created an election phenomenon unequaled in recent history. Against the odds, he derailed the matriarch of the Democratic machine, Senator Clinton. He has taken political fundraising to a new level. He is the first African American to lead his ticket into the general election. His followers claim he is the antidote to all that ails America. He is hailed as the political savior of our day. However, beneath the soaring oratory, beyond the adoring crowds, behind the change you can believe in, lie many questions. What change? Is it real change? What does Senator Obama believe? Where will he take the country? Those questions must be answered. Underneath the hype, is there an answer?
You can like Barack Obama very easily. It is only when you begin to peel back the layers and closely examine the core philosophy and record of this aspiring political leader that you begin to see a disturbing pattern.
If there is an answer, it won't be found in Kenya, the home of his father. It won't be found in Indonesia, the home of his stepfather, where he began school, where he spent his boyhood. The answer won't be found in Hawaii, where Senator Obama lived with his grandparents. To peel back the layers of hype surrounding Senator Obama, there is only one place to begin.
Well, I would like to know a lot more about his life in Chicago. Chicago's an interesting, complicated place, and you can't tell me that you could spend, 18 years there, or however long he spent, and no stories have resulted from that time?
He came out of a different ethos, Obama did. Came out of the street politics, the social worker ethos, more or less the radical activist.
When people asked him what he wanted to do, he said he wanted to bring about change. We need change, and it's not going to come from the White House, it's not going to come from Congress, it's going to come from the people.
After graduating from Columbia, Obama yearned for a connection to the great struggle of the Civil Rights era, as described in Dreams from My Father. I saw the African American community becoming more than just the place where you'd been born or the house where you'd been raised. Through organizing, through shared sacrifice, membership had been earned.
After college, I went and worked in the Great Society programs in East St. Louis, Illinois, and other places. And I think a part of that was to make the point, to prove that I was black, that my identity, that I did belong. Obama, after college, does the same thing. For 3 years, goes and works as a community organizer, and I think probably for the exact same reasons.
In 1985, Obama was hired as a community organizer by some of the original disciples of Saul Alinsky.
Gerard Kelman of the Calumet Community Religious Conference was looking for an organizer to direct the new Developing Communities Project.
Jerry Kelman, according to Obama's book, he recognized that it was very difficult for him, being white, to be an effective community organizer in neighborhoods that were almost entirely black.
The 24-year-old Obama immediately impressed them. Obama moved to Chicago, as he described it, the capital of the African-American community in the country.
It's a pattern. So you look at him going to Chicago to become a community organizer, and whose approach to community organization did he embrace? Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky was an anarchist. Saul Alinsky, by most definitions, was a radical.
He is something of an icon on the left. He compared the work of a community organizer to the work of a labor organizer. How if you stoke people's resentments, you can get them to act. He wrote Reveille for Radicals, and he wrote Rules for Radicals, which describe this process of taking action, community organizing.
As Obama worked the South Side churches to recruit support for DCP, he ran up against a serious roadblock. He wasn't religious, and therefore was looked upon with suspicion by the preachers and leaders of congregations.
It was when he's visiting these pastors that one of them says to him, "By the way, what church do you attend?" And Obama said, "Well, I don't." And the pastor said, "If you're going to come and try to enlist a bunch of ministers in a group that will be led by churches, it wouldn't be a terrible idea if you actually went to church yourself." So that leads him to this sort of search for churches, which eventually led him to Trinity United Church and Jeremiah Wright.
And then all of a sudden you start to get, well, I joined Reverend Wright's church because I knew that I couldn't organize in the African American community if I didn't have a church base.
And there's no doubt about it. Barack Obama went to that church, not by accident. He didn't drift in. He chose it, and he chose it precisely because it had that racial focus that met a need within him. He ought to be more frank about that.
As an organizer, Obama was largely a failure. He really produced no significant change. Many of the campaigns that Obama took credit for, other people were the main contributors to producing results. There's very few results that Obama can point to and say, here's something I accomplished in my years as an organizer.
One of them was to bring a job training referral center to one of the neighborhoods he was in, and the other one was to remove asbestos from a housing project. There's still asbestos in that housing project today, and the neighborhood is still a very rough area. Jobs are hard to come by. There's been no long-term improvement.
Senator Obama writes that a lot of his activity was futile, that the people in the community felt like nothing was getting done, and that his work was a waste of his time. Frustrated with the lack of change, the young organizer decided a law degree was the way to make change. When that didn't work out the way he'd hoped, he decided he needed a more influential platform to really make changes.
First time I met Barack Obama was at a fundraiser for the senator that he replaced, Senator Alice Palmer, who, while I was there, she introduced to the crowd there her likely successor, Barack Obama, this law lecturer from the University of Chicago.
Alice Palmer groomed Barack Obama to take her place in the Illinois State Senate when she ran for Congress. However, when she lost her congressional bid, Palmer assumed that her protege would step aside and let her run for her old seat. Though a staunch ally to this point, Obama followed self-interest in true Alinsky style.
Alice filed to rerun in her state Senate seat, and interestingly, Barack challenged her petitions.
He challenged each and every one of her 1,580 signatures. He challenged all of the 1,899 signatures of another candidate, and then there was yet another candidate. Obama threw all of his opponents off the ballot. That was how he got elected. He was elected to the state Senate by denying voters a choice.
My experience with him beyond that was serving on the Judiciary Committee with him for 6 years. And in that time, he tended to be late for committee meetings.
From the time I knew him, he was more engaged in his work at the University of Chicago and more interested in his future than he was in helping change the direction of public policy in Illinois.
I found him very partisan and very supportive of special interests. For instance, not being willing to support reform initiatives for public education in this state ever doesn't show unity, doesn't show reaching out, doesn't show bipartisanship.
The idea of Barack Obama as a reformer is something the media has eaten up uncritically, but it's a great lie. If you look at his record in Chicago, his record in Springfield, his record in Washington, reformers don't endorse people like Daley. Reformers don't vote for ethanol, don't vote for the bridge to nowhere. Reformers don't vote for the Farm Bill. Reformers don't push every bill that developers want to go through in the Illinois legislature.
Barack, he stood watch for the Chicago Teachers Union and for the Chicago political machine and for their patronage prerogatives at the expense of school kids in, the second largest school district in the country, Chicago Public Schools. And what bothers me the most is Barack Obama voted against welfare reform in Illinois.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
He passed a law to move people from welfare to work, slash the rolls by 80%, pass tax cuts for workers, health care.
When a real innovative law, policy change came around to try to actually change the situation, and what I'm thinking of is the Welfare Reform Act in 1996, Obama was opposed most parts of it and actually worked to try to reverse a number of the things that were involved.
Directly contradicting his campaign ads, Senator Obama, in fact, actively fought against Clinton's welfare reform in the Illinois Senate. Senator Obama exaggerates his role with many bills, including an ethics reform bill that faced little opposition and was handed to him as a favor by his political godfather, State Senator Emil Jones. Additionally, Jones took racial profiling and videotaped confession legislation from the bill's original sponsors and gave them to Obama, who today enjoys all the credit, having done little of the work.
There are many cases in politics where conservatives and liberals find common ground, where they come together around issues of reform and good government. And basically every time that happens, Barack Obama's on the other side fighting them.
He didn't spend a lot of time listening to other people, and some legislators saw him as kind of being dismissive or a little elitist.
I can't ever recall him coming over to my desk and saying, hey, I got this issue and I want to work on this issue with you, or could you support this issue?
I thought his record in Illinois is abstaining on a lot of votes as a kind of a radical out of the mainstream.
As a state senator, Obama voted present nearly 130 times.
A politician would vote present because he wanted to avoid taking a stand on an issue that might come back to bite him. I think that the Barack Obama who wrote Dreams from My Father was a very different man from the Barack Obama who is in the US Senate today and is running for president. Somewhere in there, the calculation and cynicism, expediency of self-advancement took over.
Was the same expediency on display when Barack Obama reached the US Senate? As reported in the Washington Post, after weeks of negotiations, when a bipartisan Senate group reached a deal on immigration policy and headed to the press conference, Senator Obama asked if he could come along. Surprising the delegation, Obama stepped to the mic and claimed credit for the legislation. When another effort was made in 2007, Senator Obama was rarely present. When he did show up to meetings, he was usually late. When he entered late and began raising questions, Senators Kennedy and Specter rebuked him for being late and bringing up issues that had already been resolved. Former Senator Rick Santorum recalls similar encounters with the freshman senator while working on ethics reform in the wake of the Abramoff scandal.
He was elected in 2004, and we served 2 years together. I was appointed by our leader, Bill Frist, to head up that effort in 2005. And Harry Reid appointed Barack Obama to do the same. What I saw was someone who was young, who was inexperienced, and who was basically carrying water for his leader, and ultimately, was completely uncooperative. I cannot recall a time in the United States Senate where he has stepped out on an issue and fought the left, or fought his leadership for that matter. Is it a pattern of, trying to be a uniter? The answer is clearly no. That's just not the case with him.
The question of ethics arises over earmarks, funding requests that are not subject to public scrutiny. Though Senator Obama now decries them, in the past he has been actively involved in using them. In fact, in 2006, Senator Obama requested a $1 million earmark for the University of Chicago, where at the time his wife Michelle was a vice president. Once again, did the agent of change succumb to politics as usual? Did the Obama rhetoric turn out to be Obama hype? The hype of the Obama campaign wants us to believe that Chicago made the junior senator a man of the people. When you look past the crowds and applause, who are the people and what are the politics Senator Obama stands for?
I am somebody who is no doubt progressive.
The National Journal ratings are done on the basis of just about every roll call vote in the Senate, and they rank the senators relative to one another. And the most recent National Journal ratings did show Barack Obama as the #1 most liberal senator.
And that puts him to the left of the only proclaimed socialist in the Senate, puts him to the left of Teddy Kennedy. His agenda is trans-liberal. It is radical.
There's no position I know of so far where Senator Obama has ever deviated from the liberal line. He takes almost automatically takes the most liberal position possible, and that's the way he voted automatically when he came into the Senate.
Well, what you're saying is, and I don't have enough convictions to say this is right and this is wrong. And I am in that sense something of an empty man.
And so people need to think very carefully of whether or not America is ready for a president that's going to be governed by not just his liberal agenda, but rabid liberals who are so out of control and so out of touch with America.
You'd see something like what we saw under Lyndon Johnson, the Great Society Congress of 1965, where measures that had been unpassable for years were suddenly passed within a matter of a few months.
If you look at the New Deal, 35 and 36, the guts of the reforms, the anti-poverty program of Johnson, 64 and 65, and the Civil Rights Bill, and the Reagan Revolution, 81 and 82, those 3 two-year periods were responsible for probably 2/3 of the important legislation that's happened in the last 100 years. If Obama's elected 2009 and 10, will be as sharp a move to the left as those previous years were to the right or to the left.
He's going to have an overwhelmingly Democratic Congress with him. And he's going to have more power than any American president in a long, long time.
For the average American, what will Obama's change mean regarding critical issues? Where exactly will he take the country?
I've compared the Obama campaign to the process of buying a new car. It's shiny, it's attractive, and you really want it because it's really different from anything you've ever had. And then you go into the sales manager's office and he sits down and shows you the contract and he tells you how much the monthly payments are. And suddenly you say, but I can't afford that. And when people understand that his policies are not centrist, they really are left of center, I think they're going to realize, like the shine, can't afford the price.
With the prospects likely for Democrats to increase at least a little their majorities in the House and the Senate, it's very likely that President Obama will mean higher taxes for many Americans.
You know, there's a reason why 80% of the jobs that have been created since 1980 in the industrialized world have been created in the United States, and 10% in Britain, and 10% in the rest of Europe and Japan combined. And it's because we have the lowest taxes. In Europe, you take about 48 to 50% of the income in taxes. In Britain, it's about 43. In the United States, it's 33. And that is a vast difference. Under President Obama, it's going to go north of 40.
A President Obama may affect more people more drastically on one issue more than any other: taxes. Critics expect that every family that earns more than $100,000 per year will face a potentially irrevocable change in their tax burden.
The top rate now is 35%. It'll go up to 40. Oh, but he wants to impose Social Security taxes on income above $100,000. Right now it cuts off at $100,000. That's another 12%. And then you have the Medicare tax that's 2.5%, and you have state and local taxes that are 7 or 8%, but they're deductible, so figure they're 5. So you add them up, 40 and 12 and 3 and 5, 60. And that's a fundamental change.
And we're going to bring about change.
As happy as I am that an African American, somebody who looks like me, can run for the presidency of the United States and do so credibly, at the same time, I will not vote for anybody who's going to raise my taxes.
It's essentially a redistribution of wealth from people who have earned it to people who haven't.
You have, however, said you would favor an increase in the capital gains tax. In the 1980s, when the tax was increased to 28%, the revenues went down. So why raise it at all, especially given the fact that 100 million people in this country own stock and would be affected?
Well, Charlie, what I've said is that I would look at raising the capital gains tax for purposes of fairness.
There have been 3 times the capital gains tax has been cut in our recent history. Each time, revenues rose by between 40 and 50%. Because when the tax rate drops, the velocity of the transactions increases. More people sell, more people buy, and more people are paying the lower tax, and the revenues swell.
But history shows that when you drop the capital gains tax, the revenues go up.
Well, that might happen, or it might not.
The one time they actually raised the capital gains tax, the revenues fell by $50 billion.
Well, that might happen, or it might not.
In fact, the biggest single thing that Bill Clinton did to balance the federal budget was to cut the capital gains tax.
According to the Wall Street Journal, the IRS reported that in 2005, 47% of all tax returns that reported capital gains came from households with incomes under $50,000. If you include households with incomes under $100,000, 79% of all 2005 tax returns reported capital gains. So, under President Obama, 3/4 of households would have their capital gains taxes double.
He has such a disdain for the wealthy class and people who create wealth and entrepreneurs in this country. He seems to think in order to help the poor, you got to take from the so-called rich. But what he doesn't understand, it is a small business owner in this country with 4 or 5 employees that is the backbone of this country, that need tax breaks, that need the capital gains breaks.
Why would you penalize 100 million investors in the market? Why would you penalize all those men and women who've taken a risk to start a business and to succeed? Why would you penalize them? Senator Obama has said that he would increase the rate of tax on capital gains from 15% to 28%. That would nearly double it. That's a massive disincentive for people to invest and to succeed.
With the expiration of the Bush tax cuts, every small business in America will get an automatic tax hike. And with President Obama planning to raise self-employment taxes, 2/3 of the nation's small business income may be taxed at a rate of 50%, according to Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform.
I think it's unusual to see a situation where a leading Democratic candidate like Barack Obama is calling for higher taxes and less free trade in a time of economic downturn.
Once Obama is elected, if he is elected in November and December, these markets are going to tank. Because every moron knows, if I sell my GM stock in November, I keep 85% of it. If I sell it in January, I keep 72% of it.
That was Herbert Hoover's policy in the 1930s, and it resulted in economic disaster. And of course, the result was an economic downward spiral that produced something like 25% unemployment, and produced a country where the economic gross domestic product was down 25% or more, a real economic cataclysm.
On his website, in speeches and debates, Senator Obama has suggested nearly 200 new and expanded programs that will have a 4-year cost of $1.2 trillion. Bill Clinton's 1993 tax increase raised $240 billion over 5 years. President Obama's new spending demands would require $300 billion every year. According to U.S. News and World Report, Senator Obama's proposed increase of Social Security taxes would be the largest tax hike in U.S. history.
You start taxing this economy in the ways that he has talked about, taxing income, taxing dividends, taxing corporations. He doesn't want to reduce the corporate tax. We have the 2nd or 3rd highest corporate tax in the industrialized world. And you're going to hobble this economy and seriously hobble this country.
This election, I think, will come down to whether or not we want to vote from the standpoint of what we saw in the showroom, all the glitter and the gear, or whether we really want to vote for what's going to perform out there on the road. Do we want a show horse? Or do we want a workhorse? And I think most Americans want our country to work.
In addition to a liberal ideology on taxes, when you get past the hype, Senator Obama's position on illegal immigration would result in change most Americans oppose. Obama favors what he calls comprehensive immigration reform and a pathway to citizenship. In other words, some form of amnesty for the 12 to 20 million people who violated U.S. immigration laws.
His position on immigration, just like all these Democrats, is just outrageous because they're totally out of touch with the American people.
According to a Rasmussen poll, just 30% of Americans would favor legislation that focused exclusively on legalizing the status of undocumented workers already living in the United States.
Do you support driver's licenses for illegal immigrants? Senator Obama, yes or no? Yes. Yes. Okay. I'll tell you. I am going to be fighting for comprehensive immigration reform.
The message that we're sending there is that somehow we want people to come in illegally and we'll reward them when they get here. So Obama has contributed to this magnet. I think that's a disservice to the country.
Clearly aware that illegal immigration is a hot-button issue for most Americans, Senator Obama has avoided taking a clear position on the issue of sanctuary cities. U.S. cities that refuse to enforce U.S. immigration laws and prohibit police departments from inquiring about immigration status.
To look at the impact with crime. These Latino gangs that just cause great havoc in places like California and Texas, and now you've seen them trickle down in places like the South.
And a sanctuary city policy can have deadly repercussions. In Los Angeles, in New York, Seattle, San Francisco, and in Senator Obama's own Chicago, law-abiding citizens have been the victims of crimes from illegal immigrant criminals who, once incarcerated, have not been reported to federal immigration authorities Sanctuary indeed.
The federal law is not being enforced, not because of failures of local communities, because the federal government has not done the job that it needs to do.
But you would allow the sanctuary cities to exist?
What I would do as president is pass comprehensive immigration reform, and the federal government should be doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is controlling our borders.
Amnesty has been rejected by a majority of Americans. And while U.S. immigration policy does need reform, Obama's rhetoric on the subject of language and assimilation caught many off guard.
Instead of worrying about whether immigrants can learn English, they'll learn English. You need to make sure your child can speak Spanish.
We don't have to worry about people learning English. What we have to worry about is teaching our kids Spanish. Short-sighted, wrong, and again, tone-deaf. We do have to worry about people learning English. And in terms of our kids learning other languages, 85%, I can tell you this, I was the Secretary of Education, 85% of our kids are studying a foreign language in schools. American kids go abroad. This is not a problem.
We should have every child speaking more than one language. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing when Europeans come over here. They all speak English, they speak French, they speak German. And then we go over to Europe, and all we can say is, merci beaucoup.
There's a reason that English is an important language. It's because it's still the way a large part of the world does business. And his use of the term embarrassment in that connection, we should be embarrassed.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Suggests to me that there's a little embarrassment and not total pride in being an American, and that's a real problem.
In the Senate, Barack Obama voted to continue to support sanctuary cities with federal funds. He voted against English as the official language, and he voted to allow illegal immigrants to participate in Social Security. One more example of Senator Obama's desire to bring a liberal agenda to the White House and to your house is the issue of health care.
But if you're one of the 45 million Americans who don't have health insurance, you will have a new plan.
Obama says, let's expand the coverage, hope for savings, raise taxes to pay for it, and then struggle to reduce costs. The problem is that the most effective way to reduce healthcare costs is by rationing, by saying no, by telling a 78-year-old diabetic with high blood pressure who smokes, no, you may not have that bypass operation. You mean I need a second opinion? No, you may not have it. You mean I have to pay for it myself? No, if a doctor performs it, it's okay for him to perform an abortion, but if he gives you that bypass, he's going to lose his license. So in practice, what's going to happen is we will be taking health care away from American citizens who are old and giving it to illegal immigrants who are young.
He says that he's for families and the working individual, but then he talks about a centralized government program that hasn't worked in Canada, hasn't worked in England, that has actually taken the freedom from the consumer and limited the choices, and actually taken the quality of medical care downward.
Well, Obama seems to want us to have a larger public sector than we have now. A greater safety net, more government provision, or guarantee of health care finance, government taking a much larger role in the health care sector of our economy.
A President Obama will force the American public to pay for an unproven plan that will create billions in tax expenditures and drastically reduce the level of care. A plan that gives illegal immigrants the same health care that U.S. senators have. When the hype is stripped away, is that the kind of change we can believe in? Skyrocketing gas prices have focused the nation's attention on energy. Senator Obama's ideas about energy policy have raised questions about the kind of change he believes in.
We can't tell them don't grow. We can't drive our SUVs and eat as much as we want and keep our homes on 72 degrees at all times. And things that you can do individually, though, to save energy. Making sure your tires are properly inflated.
In 2007, Senator Obama introduced a bill that put the fringe environmental lobby ahead of America's energy security. To this day, the bill has no co-sponsors. Senator Obama has said no to nuclear energy, no to drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, has proposed taxing coal and natural gas, and has said no to a gas tax holiday. Senator Obama says that future oil production will not impact present prices. However, the Wall Street Journal and Harvard economist Martin Feldstein disagree, explaining that actions impacting future supply can impact present prices. But a surprise midsummer announcement from Barack Obama said more about the senator's politics than his policies.
Now the latest scheme is, well, we're going to drill offshore. Now, I want to be absolutely clear to everybody about this. If I thought that I could provide you some immediate relief on gas prices by drilling off the shores of California and New Jersey, I understand how desperate folks are. So if I thought that by drilling offshore we could solve our problem, I'd do it.
Senator Obama made those comments on the 30th of July. 2 days later, on the 1st of August, a USA Today Gallup poll said that 57% of Americans would be more likely to vote for a candidate who supported offshore drilling. That same day, just 2 days after making his no drilling comments, Senator Obama announced he would consider offshore drilling.
I actually did vote for the $87 billion before I voted against it.
Senator Obama has no serious energy plan. Does change we can believe in really mean change we can't afford? The Obamas have been given the gift of advocacy. However, when the hype is stripped away, it seems everyone does indeed have a price. The Obama campaign has set records with its fundraising. However, not all the donations are coming in $20 at a time. On April 6, 2008, Barack Obama was in San Francisco visiting the mansion of Ann and Gordon Getty on a street known as Billionaires Row. A close look at his donors reveals very little change from old-school politics.
Change.
Many are donors like the billionaire head of a Chicago-based hedge fund, whose employees and family members contributed nearly $200,000. At the same time, the firm was hiring lobbyists to secure a rich tax loophole. Obama's largest group of contributors is the employees and families of Wall Street giant Goldman Sachs. The senator has taken money from many special interest groups and employees of lobbying firms.
I am in this race to tell the corporate lobbyists that their days of setting the agenda in Washington are over. I have done more than any other candidate in this race to take on the lobbyists, and I have won. They have not funded my campaign, they will not work in my White House, and they will not drown out the voices of the American people when I am president.
Not according to the Washington Post. Bundlers and big money donors abound in the Obama campaign network. The New York Times reveals that the largest group of bundlers in the Obama campaign is lawyers. The campaign is also supported by 2006's Lobbyist of the Year.
I do not have federal registered lobbyists bundling for me, just like I don't take PAC money.
While a state senator, Barack Obama had a standing card game with a group of lobbyists every Wednesday night. During his 2004 campaign, Senator Obama regularly took money from lobbyists. USA Today reports that he helped secure grants for 16 institutions represented by 6 of his lobbyist contributors.
To offer change that we can believe in.
Contrary to the statement Senator Obama made at the Jefferson-Jackson dinner and all across the campaign trail, according to documents filed by his own campaign, 40 federally registered lobbyists have contributed to his presidential run. While on his April fundraising trip to Billionaires Row, Senator Obama's response to a question about small-town America blatantly demonstrated that he has never left his Chicago organizer roots.
When you go into some of these small towns in Pennsylvania, like a lot of small towns in the Midwest, the jobs have been gone now for 25 years and nothing's replaced it. It's not surprising then that they get better and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them, or anti-immigrant sentiment, or anti-trade sentiment. And a way to explain their frustrations.
If you read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, you'll find a quote that is almost exactly like that. He describes the middle class in those terms, that they cling to fixed illusory points which they believe are meaningful, that they cling to the American religion, they cling to a false patriotism, he says, a false nostalgia. He says that the middle classes are people who feel beleaguered on all sides. It's almost the same as what Obama is giving about rural and Christian voters in places like Pennsylvania. Obama's comments line up perfectly with Alinsky, who is such a huge influence in his life.
If he had made the comments about bitterness and clinging to guns and God before the Iowa caucus, he would never have won the Iowa caucus.
Thank you, Iowa. Thank you.
In other words, if only there was more government and more aid and more support, you wouldn't have the people turning to position of the gun lobby and the position of the Bible lobby, according to Obama.
The ill-advised statement not only provides a peek at Senator Obama's misunderstanding of Middle America, it begs the question, what are his views on the Second Amendment?
When Senator Obama was just another left-wing politician from Illinois, he says his staff answered it for him, but I think he's responsible for it. He answered a questionnaire where he came out for the most extreme form of gun registration.
Senator Obama, the District of Columbia has a law. It's had a law since 1976. It's now before the United States Supreme Court. Is that a law consistent with an individual's right to bear arms?
As a general principle, I believe that the Constitution confers an individual right to bear arms.
And in 1996, your campaign issued a questionnaire, and your writing was on the questionnaire that said you favored a ban on handguns.
No, my writing wasn't on that particular questionnaire, Charlie. As I said, I have never favored all-out ban on handguns.
Counter to his claims in the debate, the 1996 questionnaire asked if he supported banning the sale, manufacture, and possession of handguns. Obama answered yes. Also contradicting his statements, it was later revealed that the questionnaire did have his handwriting and notes on it. Prior to the Supreme Court ruling in the D.C. gun ban case, Senator Obama said sportsmen should have the right to hunt and shoot, but that handgun bans were constitutional. Then, in a confusing twist, when the Supreme Court sided with individual rights for gun ownership, Obama agreed with both sides.
You had mentioned that the D.C. handgun law was constitutional. Now you're embracing the Supreme Court's 5-4 decision, striking down that law.
That's not what I said back in November. So,
your aide had mentioned something about that.
Well, I don't know what my aide said, but I've been very consistent. I teach constitutional law. What I said was that I believe in the Second Amendment as being an individual right, and have said that consistently.
Senator Obama represents change that may be a big concern to America's nearly 80 million gun owners. There are other areas where Senator Obama presents a clear record of his thoughts and his liberal agenda. Early in the campaign, Senator Obama advocated that states should make the decision about gay rights and the definition of marriage. However, in June of 2008, Michelle Obama clearly outlined her husband's positions on the Defense of Marriage Act and other gay issues.
Barack went on record during his U.S. Senate race calling for its complete repeal. And as a U.S. Senator, he voted to protect our Constitution from the stain of discrimination by voting against the federal marriage amendment. Barack believes that we must fight for the world as it should be, a world where together we work to reverse discriminatory laws like DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
When the California Supreme Court struck down the voter initiative against gay marriage, the candidate who pleads that every vote matters supported the court's decision over the decision of over 60% of the people of California. Just as Senator Obama's liberal agenda pitted him against many Californians, his far-left politics and policies often pit him against many Americans. Nowhere is this more evident than his position on life.
Change is a slogan. Change will take time, but change we can believe in.
I got my nursing degree when I was in my mid-30s.
I applied to work at only one hospital, Christ Hospital, on the southwest side of Chicago. I came to work one night and I heard in report that we were aborting a second trimester baby that night who had Down syndrome. I found out that the method of abortion is called induced labor abortion, and this method of abortion sometimes results in babies being aborted alive. When a nursing coworker told me that the baby had lived and that she was taking the baby to our soiled utility room to die because his parents didn't want to hold him and she didn't have time to hold him that night. And when she told me what she was doing, I couldn't bear the thought of this suffering child dying alone, and so I cradled and rocked him for the 45 minutes that he lived. And I remember toward the end of his life, I couldn't tell if he was alive or not unless I held him up against the light to see if I could see his heart beating through his chest wall because their skin is so thin at that age. And after he was pronounced dead, we crossed his little arms across his chest and tied them together with a little string. And we took him to the morgue where we took all of our other dead patients. I was instantly catapulted into becoming a pro-life activist. We approached State Senator Patrick O'Malley, who was coincidentally a board member at Christ Hospital.
I was serving as a member of the advisory board, so and I thought the world of Christ Hospital. They still are a vital provider of medical services in our community. We work with the Attorney General's office and came forward with a package of legislation to challenge this activity. It became known as the Born Alive Infant Protection Laws.
Barack Obama was the sole senator who spoke against Born Alive, encouraging his colleagues not to vote for it. The bill in 2001 ultimately failed. It was reintroduced in 2002. And again, he was the sole senator speaking against this bill on the Senate floor. He thought that declaring aborted alive babies, children, or legal persons would impinge upon Roe v. Wade and overturn Roe v. Wade. But in between 2001 and 2002, on the federal level, the Born Alive bill passed.
The support for it in the U.S. Senate was 98 yes votes and no votes.
Hillary Clinton voted for it. Ted Kennedy spoke in favor of the bill on the floor.
Barbara Boxer, as an example, made it perfectly clear that any child born deserved the protections of a U.S. citizen.
NARAL went neutral on the bill on the federal level. And this was the same bill that was in the state of Illinois.
Senator Obama in Illinois was opposed to this very proposition. I mean, adamantly proposed. He was the guy who led the effort against it. If you just take the abortion issue, no nominee of either party has ever had the record this man has had to be so one-way, one-sided on the issue.
If people know that Barack Obama is so extremely radically supportive of abortion that he thinks infanticide is acceptable if it would otherwise interfere with abortion, that they would certainly have questions about how far left he is.
Taxes, the Second Amendment, abortion. The Obama political pattern appears clear. Make statements to reassure both sides of an issue. Make everyone feel like you're on their side. Then, hope that the hype covers up the fact that your liberal actions may speak louder than your moderate words.
Bin Laden is very well aware that Democrats over and over again try to undercut the war on terror by diminishing the tools that we need to get the clues to stop the next attack.
One of the biggest things Obama would do as president is to emasculate the Patriot Act.
In a 2003 questionnaire, Senator Obama said he would vote to repeal the Patriot Act. In 2006, Senator Obama supported legislation that would have drastically curtailed our efforts to protect our country. For example, originally, the House version of the Patriot Act reauthorization gave authorities 180 days to inform suspects after searching a home or business. Revisions to the act shortened that period to 30 days.
But Obama wanted it to be 7 days. Now, the IRS can seize those records, the DEA can seize those records, but when the Homeland Security folks seize those records, they have to tell the terrorist within 7 days if Obama had his way. I call that the Terrorist Notification Act of 2007.
He voted to essentially give Osama bin Laden the same rights as Americans have when it comes to intercepting his calls and emails that he may transmit. And if, in fact, his vote had prevailed, the whole war on terror would come to a halt. And to take that kind of a soft approach is just to invite more attacks.
Early in the Democratic primary, Senator Obama also voiced strong opposition to legislation known as FISA renewal, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. After securing the nomination, Senator Obama switched his position, abandoning the left-wing supporters who gave him that nomination. Even his most ardent supporters were flabbergasted at his reversal. Daily Kos remarked, he, Mr. Obama, is betraying his claims of being a new kind of politician. When Senator Obama realized the betrayal, he rushed to reassure his panicking left wing, saying, "Once I'm sworn in as president, I'll conduct a comprehensive review of all surveillance programs, perhaps preparing the way for yet another flip-flop down the road."
Look, anytime you have one of these issues, it's a balancing test between civil liberties and national security. You don't want to have all national security, you'd have a dictatorship. You don't want to have all civil liberties, you'd be totally exposed and vulnerable. And if the right balance is here, I think Obama's kind of here.
And a fellow citizen of the world.
I'm afraid there's no evidence in the public record that Senator Obama understands the nature of the danger this country faces today.
You know, I think judgment is the most important thing, and persistence and character. And that means the ability to stand up and stand against the political winds.
Senator Obama has made his superior judgment a central theme of his campaign. In July of 2007, he made a commitment during the YouTube debate that stunned foreign policy experts.
Would you be willing to meet separately, without precondition, during the first year of your administration in Washington or anywhere else, with the leaders of Iran, Syria, Venezuela, Cuba, and North Korea, in order to bridge the gap that divides our countries?
I would. And the reason is this, that the notion that somehow not talking to countries is punishment to them, which has been the guiding diplomatic principle of this administration, is ridiculous.
When you hear people like Barack Obama talk about aggressive diplomacy with people who are our enemies and have made no secret of their determination to destroy us, a lot of people think, well, what's the harm with that? What's wrong with talking to people?
If the President of the United States sits down with Ahmadinejad, it's a recognition of his legitimacy. He's a serious player. He's worth the president's time. How can you have a dialogue if a person calls Israel a rotting corpse of a nation and talks about how it and the United States will be blown away by Iran?
Send them a clear message that they have to stop not only with their potential funding of militias inside of Iraq, but they also have to stop funding Hamas, they have to stop funding Hezbollah, they've got to stand down on their nuclear weapons. There will be continued consequences for those kinds of actions, but that here are also some carrots.
Well, that's not exactly a profound statement. We've obviously made many statements to Iran and strong statements that we're not going to accept the development and deployment of a nuclear weapon. He's also said that we don't like the fact that they fund terrorist organizations. We've made that statement many times. So this is not a new message that would go to the Iranians.
The idea that negotiations haven't been tried before with some of these adversaries also reflects, I think, a lack of knowledge about what's been going on. In the case of Iran, our European friends have been talking to Iran for almost 5 years as well.
Strong countries and strong presidents talk to their adversaries. That's what Kennedy did with Khrushchev. That's what Reagan did with Gorbachev. That's what Nixon did with Mao.
Well, he got all this wrong. I mean, again, this is what worries me. Now, he's supposed to be an intellectual, but how could he misread history so badly?
In June of 1961, not 6 months into the first year of his administration, President Kennedy met for the first and only time with Soviet Premier Khrushchev.
Kennedy afterwards told New York Times columnist James Reston that he thought Khrushchev had manhandled him in their conversations, that he had not done well, that he had not given a convincing impression of his own strength and of America's strength.
Khrushchev described Kennedy as too intelligent and too weak. Kennedy himself described the encounter this way: "He just beat the hell out of me. I've got a terrible problem if he thinks I'm inexperienced and have no guts."
Kennedy wasn't ready, and Kennedy had the candor to admit that he wasn't ready. And believe me, Obama in the same way isn't ready, less ready than Kennedy.
2 months after meeting with Khrushchev, Kennedy's terrible problem became a terrible reality. In less than a year, the terrible problem became a nightmare.
Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island.
Many believe that this perception of Kennedy's weakness was a major factor in Khrushchev's decision to put ballistic missiles into Cuba. This is about as graphic an example as you can get of the fact there are risks, there are downsides, there are costs to engaging in diplomacy, especially when you talk about it as Senator Obama does, without preconditions.
That's what Nixon did with Mao.
The historic 1972 meeting between Nixon and Mao took place only after more than 100 private meetings between U.S. and Chinese officials. It took a secret trip by Secretary of State Henry Kissinger 9 months prior to the event to set the preconditions for the crucial meetings.
When Nixon finally went to China in 1972, it had been well planned out in advance. Shows why Nixon and Kissinger were great statesmen and not naive, inexperienced American politicians.
That's what Reagan did with Gorbachev.
In addition to more than 40 years of preconditions and prior groundwork, it was an undeniable U.S. military, a burdened Soviet economy, and a missile defense shield that brought Premier Gorbachev to meet with President Reagan. Direct talks took place only after 5 years of preconditions and lower-level talks. It also required experienced statesmanship.
Ronald Reagan had to walk out of Gorbachev at Reykjavik. When he did, in the plane on the way back, Charles Wick turned to him and said, "Mr. President, you've won the Cold War." Waiting and meeting on his terms, not on Gorbachev's terms, made the difference.
More recently, when Muammar Gaddafi agreed to give up his WMD, according to William Safire, many wanted to treat the dictator's epiphany as the result of patient negotiation. In reality, he was transformed into a pussycat by the force of American arms, not by charm, eloquence, or hope. Did Senator Obama misrepresent history to score political points? Did he also subsequently misrepresent Iran to try to convince us he is strong on national security?
I mean, think about it. Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, these countries are tiny compared to the Soviet Union. Iran, they spend 1/100th of what we spend on the military. I mean, if Iran ever tried to pose a serious threat to us, they wouldn't stand a chance.
After minimizing the threat of a nuclear Iran, within the space of just 2 days, Senator Obama reversed himself.
Iran is a grave threat. It has an illicit nuclear program. It supports terrorism across the regions and militias in Iraq. It threatens Israel's existence. It denies the Holocaust.
Barack Obama said it was a relatively puny country, not to worry about it. More recently, he has said it is a very serious threat. Now, which is it? And when it says the kind of insane things that it says, the combination of insanity plus nuclear power, nuclear capability, and these missiles makes this country a major worry and a major threat.
It shows that you don't have a real view of the overall geostrategic situation and the challenges that America's next president is going to have to address.
As the press and public began to question his naivete, the Obama spin machine went into high gear, resulting in a new stance. Senator Obama used his better judgment to quickly redefine "without preconditions" to now mean "with preparation."
I believe that Senator Obama has changed his position as the conditions under which he would meet with the president of Iran. Hasn't been pointed out very much that there was a change. I think it's kind of a big story.
Perhaps such rapid changes should be expected from any senator with only 143 days of national experience before beginning a campaign. However, it must be noted that the freshman senator from Illinois has had the opportunity to increase his foreign policy experience.
He chairs the subcommittee on Europe. It has jurisdiction over NATO. NATO is critical to our mission in Afghanistan. He's held not one substantive hearing to do oversight, to figure out what we can do to actually have a stronger presence with NATO in Afghanistan.
Well, first of all, I became chairman of this committee at the beginning of this campaign, at the beginning of 2007. So it is true that we haven't had oversight hearings on Afghanistan.
Did Senator Obama choose to campaign rather than call hearings? Senator Joseph Lieberman, former Democratic vice presidential candidate with the experience of 20 years in the Senate, is not so distracted. If a president ever embraced our worst enemies in this way, he would strengthen them and undermine our most steadfast allies. A great Democratic Secretary of State, Dean Acheson, once warned, "No people in history have ever survived who thought they could protect their freedom by making themselves inoffensive to their enemies." Iran, the Patriot Act, FISA. All of these issues are superseded in the Obama campaign by the question of Iraq.
So on the critical issues that actually matter, I believe that my judgment has been sound.
Senator Obama's campaign has vigorously hyped the image of Obama as the unwavering critic of the war in Iraq. It is the cornerstone of his claims to having the right judgment to be president and commander-in-chief. However, closer examination reveals that his position is, perhaps, as fluid as the polls it follows.
The problem as far as Iraq is concerned is he doesn't know what to do in Iraq.
And it's easy for him to say that he did not support the war. Well, he was not there to support the war. And there's no telling how he would have voted.
When you said in 2004, you didn't know how you would have voted on the resolution. You said in 2004 there was no difference between you and George Bush on the war, and you took that speech you're now running on off your website in 2004, and there's no difference in your voting record and Hillary's ever since. Give me a break. This whole thing is the biggest fairy tale I've ever seen.
Having staked out his Iraq position to the pleasure of the far left, during the ABC debate, Senator Obama showed the disregard, bordering on arrogance, that he has for the experience and expertise of our military.
So you'd give the same rock-hard pledge that no matter what the military commander said, you would give the order, bring him home?
Because the commander-in-chief sets the mission, Charlie. That's not the role of the generals.
There's a lot at stake there. And the idea that you have a person running for president who has already made a political statement that he's going to leave the battlefield no matter what, I think gives people that wear the uniform a reason to conclude that he doesn't have the judgment that it takes to be commander-in-chief.
When MoveOn.org attacked General Petraeus, the House and Senate overwhelmingly voted to condemn the effort. Senator Obama did not vote.
The Democratic presidential candidates have been talking about Iraq as if nothing had changed since November 2006. The public clearly perceives that things are improved, and sooner or later they're going to have to catch up with events on the ground, or it will be, in my view, to their detriment.
And he is going to have a more realistic view of what to do in Iraq, that you can't just start this schedule of withdrawal and just do it month after month after month until in 12 months or 16 months or an hour and a half, all American troops are out. You can't do that. So he will have to adjust.
On the 3rd of July, just as predicted, the adjustment began.
When I go to Iraq and I have a chance to talk to some of the commanders on the ground, I'm sure I'll have more information and we'll continue to refine my policies.
And only a few hours later, Senator Obama rushed to reassure the Code Pink radicals that he was still their anti-war candidate.
I think what's happened is that the McCain campaign primed the pump with the press to suggest that somehow we were changing our policy when we hadn't.
On Obama's trip to Iraq, he saw the progress being made as a result of the surge of U.S. troops. Violence is down. Security is returning. Yet Senator Obama refused to give credit to a successful strategy, perhaps because he had campaigned strongly against it.
Even knowing what you know now, you still would not have supported the surge. People may be scratching their heads and saying, why?
Well, because what I was referring to, and I've consistently referred to, is the need for a strategy that actually concludes our involvement in Iraq and moves Iraqis to take responsibility for the country.
But did the surge help do that?
Let me finish, Katie. What happens is that if we continue to put $10 to $12 billion a month into Iraq, if we are willing to send as many troops as we can muster continually into Iraq, there's no doubt that that's going to have an impact.
If there is one word that the Obama campaign would like to define this race, it is change. Why then can't Senator Obama make a change and admit he was wrong on the surge? Because what change really means is that Senator Obama changes his stance on issues from one moment to the next.
The fact is that if Barack Obama's policy on Iraq had been implemented, Barack Obama couldn't go to Iraq today.
He's talked about, we are change, we are new, we are the new hope, we're the new generation. We're not going to practice the politics as usual. And he practices the politics as usual cubed. I mean, he hasn't just shifted, he has jumped all over the map. Bob Herbert wrote of him that his changes give you whiplash. They are so dramatic. With Barack Obama, it looks as if this radical shift to the center was a radical readjustment of his assessment of what he needs to do to get elected. That's not the new politics.
Well, one of the things that I remember from the old folks in my community is that they used to say, tell me who you walk with, and I'll tell you who you are.
Gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America? No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America that's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Well, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I had a white mother, but when you married a black man in those days, you lived as a black person. So there was never any confusion in my mind about feeling that I was half of something. And this is something different, I think, probably than Barack Obama.
I can't be a colored coon on a faculty at Vanderbilt with no sense of pride. And I can't be a Supreme Court judge named Long Dong Silver who disrespects black women and himself. I got to be me.
I didn't hear the word identity growing up, so given his background, this would have, I understand, this would have been a source of great anxiety.
I would work for Barack, but he don't have the experience that Hillary had. But he's an unknown in terms of foreign policy, but his health care plan ain't as good as Edward's plan. But the church he has belonged to for 20 years causes some white people and some Uncle Tom some problem. I am the first pastor in the history of the United States to be crucified and vilified because one of my members just might turn this mother out, turn the tables on white supremacy, and have a black woman sleeping legally at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue when you do what the Lord says do.
In March of 2008, America got a shocking introduction to Senator Obama's judgment about the choice of a pastor, Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright, Jr. But when the volatile footage flooded the evening news and the internet, Reverend Wright became a political disaster. The Obama hype machine went into furious action, culminating in what supporters called an historic moment in U.S. race relations.
If all that I knew of Reverend Wright with the snippets of those sermons that have run in an endless loop on the television sets and YouTube, there is no doubt that I would react in much the same way.
And if you really listen to what he's saying in his speech, there was no maturity, no character, no saying, dealing straight ahead with the real question here.
Which was, what the hell were you doing in the church? Why'd you bring your kids there? Holy smokes, this guy's awful. You know, why would you subject your children to this? It's, in my view, it was a moral test. I mean, it's, you know, anybody can talk a good game, but if it comes right down to it, and if someone you love and admire does something appalling again and again and again, are you gonna stand up and be counted or not? That's the question. And he never answered it.
Reverend Wright baptized the senator, performed the Obama's marriage, baptized his children, inspired the title of his best-selling book, and has provided spiritual guidance for nearly half of his life and virtually all of his political career. The Obamas have also contributed over $20,000 to Trinity United.
Not once in my conversations with him have I heard him talk about any ethnic group in derogatory terms, or treat whites with whom he interacted with anything but courtesy and respect.
They live below the sea level. They live below the level of Clarence Colin and condemnesia. Hillary was not a black boy raised in a single-parent home. Barack was. Barack knows what it means to be a black man living in a country and a culture that is controlled by rich white people. Hillary can never know that. Hillary ain't never been called a nigger. Jesus was a poor black man who lived in a country and who lived in a culture that was controlled by rich white people. For every 1 pound of skis of rice, you got 1 million in prison. Jesus taught me how to love the hell out of my enemies.
Jesus tells us that we're supposed to bless those who curse us. We're supposed to love those who hate us. And so that's a very, very different attitude from the attitude that I heard expounded on those little clips that I saw on television.
And given the fact that Barack Obama is a very intelligent person, he was asleep or absent most of the time over that 20-year period, you know, or he embraced the theology in its totality.
This is a church Barack Obama's mother, grandmother, grandfather could never feel a part of, could never feel comfortable in. This is a young man so desperate to establish a black identity that he, in effect, betrays the people who love him most. It's painful to see.
Less than 2 months after the mainstream recognition of Reverend Wright's inflammatory doctrines, Reverend Wright was on display at the National Press Club.
We both know that if Senator Obama did not say what he said, he would never get elected. Politicians say what they say and do what they do based on electability, based on sound bites, based on polls. You cannot do terrorism on other people and expect it never to come back on you.
The next day, Senator Obama offered a stronger reaction to the spiritual mentor he said he could no more deny than his own family.
I've known Reverend Wright for almost 20 years. The person I saw yesterday was not the person that I met 20 years ago.
Reverend Wright's always been Reverend Wright. The idea that he doesn't recognize the Reverend Wright of old is, you know, of course he does. Well, if Barack Obama can't see through that, what does that say about his presidential judgment?
And then I've got to give a special shout out to my pastor, the guy who puts up with me, counsels me, listens to my wife complain about me. He's a friend and a great leader, not just in Chicago, but all across the country. So please, everybody, give an extraordinary welcome to my pastor, Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright, Jr., Trinity United Church of Christ. Where's he at? There he is. That's him. That's him right there. You wearing a suit today, right?
1 year after calling Jeremiah Wright his friend and a great leader, Senator Obama sent a letter to Trinity United's new pastor, Otis Moss, saying that they were leaving the church.
He would clearly not have left that church had he not had this whole Reverend Wright episode not exploded in the media.
I think that Senator Obama has shown that he is a practical politician, and he is not going to stick with anything that's going to cause him trouble in the campaign. So he threw his pastor under the bus without worrying very much about it.
But what is even worse is the possibility that he does not believe what they believe. Because then you have the specter of someone sitting in a church listening to for 20 years, listening to an ideology that he does not believe in. That belies a capacity for self-betrayal that is truly amazing, that is truly a problem, a personality defect.
But Reverend Wright isn't the only religious leader who might make us question Senator Obama's judgment.
Racism is still America's greatest addiction. I also believe that America is the greatest sin against God. So then, this greatest sin against God, racism, it's as natural as the air we breathe.
Father Michael Pfleger's pronouncements stunned America, but were not new to Senator Obama. Pfleger's endorsement was featured in a newspaper ad for Obama's 2000 congressional campaign. In a 2004 Chicago Sun-Times article, Senator Obama described Pfleger as a key source for his spiritual guidance. He was on one of Senator Obama's religious advisory bodies, as was Reverend Wright. As a state senator, Obama provided grants of over $200,000 to Pfleger's church.
And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit back while you tear down Farrakhan and Jeremiah Wright. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you seek to reduce Jeremiah Wright, who's one of the greatest biblical scholars this nation has, to a 30-second soundbeat and try to demonize him and trivialize him? You cannot do that. We won't allow you to do that. Because when you take out him, you take out all of us.
Hey, they say Farrakhan is a hater. He hate white people. See, I love Father Pfleger.
Not only are Reverend Wright and Father Pfleger a concern for Senator Obama, so is Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan.
But the most shocking thing is the award for Lifetime Achievement.
In December of 2007, while Senator Obama was still a member of Trinity United Church of Christ, its Trumpet News magazine announced the recipient of its Lifetime Achievement Award.
And Barack Obama kissed it off by saying, well, that award was for Farrakhan's work with ex-offenders. Now, that was a total lie. The article and the presentation never mentioned ex-offenders, but rather it was for lifetime achievements.
He has been called one of the most misunderstood and misdefined leaders of our day. The Reverend Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright Jr. infers that when Minister Louis Farrakhan speaks, Black America listens.
He is one of the most important voices in the 20th and 21st century. That's what I think about him. As I said on Bill Moyers, when Louis Farrakhan speaks, it's like E.F. Hutton speaks. All Black America listens.
However, when Minister Farrakhan speaks, often this is what people hear.
White folks, you're going to have to give up the whole damn country. We don't give a damn about no white man law when you attack what we love.
You are not real Jews, those of you that are not real Jews. You are the synagogue of Satan.
Yes, they exercise extraordinary control. Calling someone Jaime is not an action against Jewish people. And black people will never be free in this country until they're free of that kind of control.
Minister Farrakhan saved his praise for Senator Obama.
He's fresh. He doesn't come with a lot of the baggage. Whether you are broad enough to open your eyes, this young man is the hope of the entire world, that America will change and be made better because a better man may become her leader.
But Senator Obama was quick to distance himself from Farrakhan.
I obviously can't censor him, but it is not support that I sought, and we're not doing anything, I assure you, formally or informally with Minister Farrakhan.
Do you reject his support?
Well, Tim, I can't say to somebody that he can't say that he thinks I'm a good guy.
Minister Farrakhan is one of the most controversial voices in America and is certainly a major force in Senator Obama's Hyde Park neighborhood and surrounding district. Obama and Minister Farrakhan live within walking distance of each other. Senator Obama and Reverend Wright both attended the Nation of Islam's Million Man March, and yet the media has never bothered to ask Obama about the existence of any past relationship between the two men, even in the wake of Farrakhan's endorsement of Obama. Senator Obama's campaign has also accused the press of mischief-making related to another Obama associate, one who lives just a block or two away.
Most Americans, if you told them their neighbor had set bombs, even if it was a long time ago, would probably be a little unnerved by that.
On the morning of September 11, 2001, readers of the New York Times found these chilling words: "I don't regret setting bombs. I feel we didn't do enough." Spoken by a forgotten American radical, they would later come back to haunt Senator Obama. In 1995, future Senator Barack Obama was feted at a fundraising event in his Chicago neighborhood. The event was hosted by William Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn. In the late 60s and early 70s, Ayers and Dohrn were the leaders of a violent terrorist organization, the Weathermen. The Weathermen participated in more than 20 bombings over a decade. Ayers admits to bombing the New York City Police Headquarters, the Capitol, and the Pentagon. In 1981, 4 people were killed when a Weatherman robbery of a Brinks armored car went awry. Ayers stated the Weathermen's philosophy as follows: kill all the rich people, break up their cars and apartments, bring the revolution home, kill your parents. That's where it's really at. After 11 years on the run, Ayers and Dohrn turned themselves in. Subsequently, they were acquitted due to tainted evidence from illegal wiretaps. Said Ayers, "Guilty as hell and free as a bird." When the association with William Ayers was brought to the senator's attention, his response again never really settled the question of his judgment.
This is a guy who lives in my neighborhood, who's a professor of English in Chicago, who I know and who I have not received some official endorsement from. He's not somebody who I exchange ideas from on a regular basis. And the notion that somehow, as a consequence of me knowing somebody who engaged in detestable acts 40 years ago when I was 8 years old, somehow reflects on me and my values doesn't make much sense, George.
Barack Obama really couldn't bring himself to say, you know, I really don't like that guy.
You know, kids are out of control today. Duh. You know, I was out of control a few years ago myself.
That was too much for him to say. He had to talk about what a decent fellow he is and what a good professor, how he's worked on education policy. Well, you know, Hamas has a widows and orphans fund, but that doesn't change the fact that their day job is creating widows and orphans.
The Obama-Ayers relationship goes further back than the 1995 political coming out party at Ayers' home. Obama was chosen as chairman of the board of the $50 million Chicago Annenberg Challenge. Ayers wrote the grant that founded the CAC and would have been closely involved with Obama's selection. They appeared on panel discussions together, and they served as directors of the Woods Fund together. Obama's affiliation with Ayers is made more troubling by the fact that neither Ayers nor Dohrn are in any way repentant about their terrorist past.
Barack Obama is saying, well, take me at my judgment. Well, your judgment puts you in bed with Ayers and Jeremiah Wright. You know, what more do we need to see to say, you know what, this may not be the judgment we want in the Oval Office?
That a person continues to sort of build relationships and alliances with people who turn out to have nefarious backgrounds. That ought to give one pause.
William Ayers, Reverend Wright, and Father Michael Pfleger illustrate some of the radical political associations trailing Senator Obama. But success in Chicago's questionable political mix requires more than an appeal to the left. It requires money.
Barack Obama has his roots in the Cook County machine in Chicago. The same fundraiser who is being federally prosecuted today for illegally raising money for the governor of Illinois was Barack Obama's chief fundraiser.
Tony Rezko was a prominent businessman in Chicago who began his career as a developer of low-income subsidized housing in 1989.
And was one of the first people to raise funds for Barack Obama. In fact, he offered Barack Obama a job before Barack Obama served in the Illinois Senate.
In 2005, the Obamas purchased a mansion in Hyde Park for $1.65 million. Rezko toured the house with Obama prior to the purchase. Was there an improper involvement? Perhaps there is a bigger question.
In all my conduct, there's never been any implications, including in this situation, that I in any way used my office to do favors for people, to help folks, betray the public trust in any sort of way.
What did Barack Obama ever do for Tony Rezko? He wrote a letter specifically to help Rezko and his former law firm boss to get a $14.6 million housing deal that involved a heavy amount of development fees. There are several bills that involve special tax credits for developers of subsidized housing. If you look at all those things, you say, really, Barack Obama did quite a bit for Tony Rezko. And it makes sense that Rezko and several other developers gave him the seed money for his political career.
Tony Rezko has been convicted on federal extortion and bribery charges related to his fundraising activities for Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. He also faces felony charges in Las Vegas over nearly $500,000 in gambling debts. When Rezko was convicted, Obama issued this statement: "I'm saddened by today's verdict. This isn't the Tony Rezko I knew."
There's a bit of a pattern of cognitive dissonance when it comes to friends who have been tainted by scandal or controversy.
Obama still says, well, I didn't know him very well. Then after evidence is produced that Obama knew Rezko and the others extremely well, Obama says, well, he's turning out not to be the person I thought he was. And then finally, there's enough evidence produced where Obama says, well, I just disassociate myself from Rezko, from Reverend Wright, from Louis Farrakhan, from William Ayers. By the time Obama's finished disassociating himself from his Chicago associations, it's hard to know what he was doing in Chicago. It's all a lie.
It has recently been revealed by Joe Stevens of The Washington Post that Senator Obama received a preferential rate on his super jumbo loan for the purchase of their Hyde Park mansion from Northern Trust. ABC News' Jake Tapper commented, "Again, the Obama campaign seems to handle these things by closing their eyes, holding their breath, and hoping a starstruck media will leave it at that."
The land deal is such a red flag. It's just no one is looking at what's under that red flag.
Anyway, guys, come on now. I mean, I just answered like 8 questions.
Unless the mainstream media asks the tough questions, we may never know. What we do know is, at the least, with Wright, Ayers, and Rezko, Barack Obama should have used more of his vaunted judgment. As with his Chicago associates and his spiritual guides, Senator Barack Obama's endorsements shine a clear light on who will be looking for support if he wins the presidency.
As I understand it, you've just come from the AFL-CIO meeting. They have voted to endorse Barack Obama?
Yes, 62-0 to endorse Barack Obama.
Hi, I'm Nancy Keenan. I'm president at NARA Pro-Choice America. And we're here today to announce that we are endorsing Senator Barack Obama for President of the United States.
It's time again for a new generation of leadership. It is time now for Barack Obama.
Barack Obama racking up another endorsement today, this one coming straight from Cuba's Fidel Castro.
We like Mr. Obama, and we hope that he will the election. And I do believe he is like John Kennedy, great man with a great principle.
أظن نحن نعمل إن الأسود هذا يكون معتز بفريقيته وبإسلامه وبعقيدته.
There is a group of people, labor unions, trial lawyers, pro-choice groups, that contribute huge amounts of money to political races. And he'll be beholden to the same people. It's not going to be different.
Obama has left the church, says he's left heirs, left Farrakhan and all the others. But because of Senator Obama's less than clear explanations, the question still remains: how much of Wright, Ayers, Farrakhan, and Rezko is left in Obama?
The truth is, a politician like Obama can't simply shed his past, like a snake sheds a skin. The character issue is there. It's a key issue.
The change will not be easy. That's the change we need. Change will take time.
It's not a single factor, but it is the single most disturbing pattern is the pattern itself of that reveals his true political philosophy and actually shines a light on his true political track record. And I'm hoping that the truth will set us free.
Unity, hope, change. A campaign filled with promises and expectations, fueled by hype. Is there a smoking gun hidden in Senator Obama's history? That is a question we can leave to the blogosphere. We don't need a smoking gun. We don't need to fear skeletons in the closet. Because beyond the hype, there are clear facts that answer any question we need to know about Senator Obama.
If you want to have more taxes taken out of your check, Obama's your choice. If you want the government to be more in charge of things like your health care, where your kids go to school, and what kind of programs that you'll end up paying for, Obama's your guy.
I think the potential liability, weakness of Senator Obama is the national security experience. Can he deal with the threat of terror? Can he deal on the world scene? Does he know what's going on? Can he be an effective commander-in-chief? That is the thing that I believe worries the Obama people.
Obama's ties to radicals do not make him a radical. His ties to communists don't make him a communist. His ties to a terrorist don't make him a terrorist. The question, though, that people should be asking is, what sort of judgment does a man have when he chooses his friends and he ends up with people like William Ayers, people like the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, people like Tony Rezko?
I think it's shocking that Barack Obama has gotten as far as he's gotten. But you have got to look at the person. And too many people have blinders on, and they just disregard all these clues to character, and they disregard the track record, and they vote for basically an actor, a very good actor.
It's not enough to talk about change. You have to put yourself at risk, and that's one thing I really haven't seen Barack Obama do yet.
We need somebody whose steady hand at the helm is going to make us a better, a stronger, and more secure nation.
It's not change, but change we can believe in. Hope. Hope. And hope. The hope of a skinny kid with a funny name who believes that America has a place for him too. Hope.
I think he's been successful with those words because they have absolutely no meaning whatsoever. It is stunning, the emptiness of I have never in my life seen political rhetoric that profoundly empty. What change do you want? And the media, no one says put it on the table. Who are you? What change? If we put the reins of power in your hands, what road are you going to take us down?
Unity is a word, just like change is a word, just like hope is a word. What do they really mean? Or are they just being utilized for some other purpose?
At the end of the day, you don't go by what people say, you go by what they do.
For young people in America today, I think they're focused on that word change, meaning this man is going to bring us hope.
I have hope. Hope.
Yeah, it's true. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry.
For 8 years.
We all thought it was gone, and now it's back.
Hope.
I'm not sure Senator Obama even understands it. You can't get hope from somebody else. And their level of expectations here from Senator Obama are so high. Based on everything I know about this man, he's going to break their hearts.
I sometimes wonder if the world is a big enough environment for Obama's ego. When Obama comes to Europe and proclaims he's a citizen of the world, well, that might, in Obama's world, be a good thing to say, but I'm not sure that Americans want to elect as president a citizen of the world. We want a citizen of the United States.
I don't think there's any way that he can maintain this aura, this sort of messianic, charismatic aura that he has now, and be visible as just a regular, normal human being. No one has ever pulled that off, and again, whether he becomes president or not, he's not going to pull it off either. At some point, he's going to disappoint people.
My dad always counseled me, know where people stand on the issues, because what's most important is the fine print. Don't be bowled over by the hype.
I think that everybody is caught up with the mood and the music. Everybody's looking at Obama's affect and his charisma and his speaking style. They're not listening to the lyrics. But after he's elected president, it's the lyrics that matter, not the music.
Yeah. We about to make history. The first black president is destined and it's meant to be. Get off your ass, black people. It's time to get out and vote. Paint the White House black.
You send a kid to the emergency room for a treatable illness like asthma. They end up taking up a hospital bed. It costs, you gave them treatment early, and they got some treatment and a breathalyzer, or an inhalator, not a breathalyzer. I haven't had much sleep in the last 48 hours, so.
The Bentley coupe paint is dripping wet, it got sex appeal, never should have hated. You never should have doubted him. With a slot in the president's iPod, Obama shouted him.
And over the last 15 months, we've traveled to every corner of the United States. I've now been in 57 states. I think one left to go. Alaska and Hawaii I was not allowed to go to, even though I really wanted to visit, but my staff would not justify it.
The world is ready for change because Obama is here, yeah. Because Obama is here. The world is ready for change because Obama is here, yeah.
This past week, we passed out of the U.S. Senate Banking Committee, which is my committee. This Memorial Day, as our nation honors its unbroken line of fallen heroes, and I see many of them in the audience here today. I had an uncle who was one of who was part of the first American troops to go into Auschwitz and liberate the concentration camps. And the story in our family is that when he came home, he just went up into the attic, and he didn't leave the house for 6 months.
First time in my adult lifetime, I'm really proud of my country. And not just because Barack has done well, but because I think people are hungry for change.
Why have you ruled that out, running nationally?
You know, I am a believer in knowing what you're doing when you apply for a job. And I think that if I were to seriously consider running on a national ticket, I would essentially have to start now before having served a day in the Senate. Now, there's some people who might be comfortable doing that, but I'm not one of those people.